Hello and welcome my friends to another Saturday morning arcade. I am Savino as always, and today, as promised on my last video, we will be taking a look at the game that, if it was the only release of 1989, would have made the whole year worth it. Released by Sega on January 17th, 1989, Golden Axe was an instant hit. The game, which runs on the famous Sega System 16, quickly became the second most played cabinet in Japan upon release, and also the most played arcade game when it debuted in the US. And there is no surprise here, aside from being a very flashy game, Golden Axe was also a game of many firsts, which certainly caught the attention of the players back then. I mean, the attract mode alone was enough to draw any eyes to the cabinet, and it certainly attracted mine. Seeing these magic attacks taking place like no game had before was pretty amazing, but let's start from the beginning. Like many games from the arcade era, Golden Axe didn't waste too much time with introductions and story. You can learn more about the characters' motivation and their powers if you watch the demo video, which honestly is a very clever way to introduce the world without getting in the way of the player. I mean, we all watched these demos countless times. But also, like Double Dragon before it, the story is properly introduced right at the start of the game with a small cutscene showing a wounded soldier called Alex being chased and beaten by a bad guy. You manage to scare the bad guy off, and before collapsing lifeless on the floor, Alex tells you about the kidnapping of the princess and the king. I really like this intro, it leaves no room for doubt. Like Double Dragon, it portrays a scene of cowardice, where a much stronger person beats someone who can defend himself. The difference here is that, despite being only a few seconds long, you can skip everything and go right into the action, while in Double Dragon, you have to watch Williams slowly dragging Marion away. You also get a small cutscene between levels where the heroes discuss their next step while drawing on a map, which not only looks cool, but it was also the first time that such a thing was presented in a beat'em up. Later on, a lot of games would follow this trend and present their levels that way. Golden Axe was also the first beat'em up to break the fourth wall and acknowledge itself as a video game. After beating the game and saving the princess and the king, you are presented with this small cutscene. It's a pretty fun and silly cutscene and always left me wondering if Golden Axe 2 wasn't supposed to happen in our world, but I digress. Visually, Golden Axe is above everything we have seen so far. Yes, the graphics are a bit grainy and overly brown, but even so, this is a very impressive game. You start your journey inside a dead forest, with mist and dead trees surrounding you. Just moments later, the fog dissipates to reveal a lush green fields with mountains in the background. What is more impressive in these levels, aside from the beautiful parallax scrolling, is that you can see the passage of time. As you advance in the level, you see the color change to an orange stone, announcing the sunset. This is a feature that will repeat later in the game, and it's impressive how such a small detail can make a world of difference in the mood of the game. What is most impressive here is that everything changes the color tone, not only the sky. The ground, the rocks, the trees, everything gets a new tint, which was very impressive for 1989. And let's not forget how detailed the world here is. From the amazing level design like the Turtle Village and the Great Eagle, to the small details like the roots from plants twirling on the ground and small huts with straw roofs, with a small Sega imprint on their doors. There's a lot to see here. And more than that, the world here is alive. You can see the eyes of the giant turtle and eagle moving around as you see from time to time people being chased by the bad guys running and screaming. Details like this add a lot of personality and urgency to the game, and for the first time civilians were a tangible part of the world. But while the world looks beautiful with varied and unique vistas, the enemies are not so much. You will find here the same 5 enemies over and over again with only their colors changed, but while this would be a problem in most games, here not so much. Not only is the game short enough to avoid make these encounters tiresome, but the enemies have enough personality to make you entertained or furious depending on how your encounters with them went. The animations in Golden Axe are also pretty impressive. I mean, most of it. The walk cycles are not that great, but that can and will be overlooked when you see the combat in action. Despite having no more frames than usual, Golden Axe makes an excellent use of smear, creating a sensation of fluidity we felt equal so far. More than that, Golden Axe was also the first game to ever introduce variations when finishing your enemies with some impressive and very powerful animations. And let's not forget the star of the show, the magic powers. They are incredibly cool and left people in awe back in the day thanks to how impressive they were for the time. Seriously, take a look at this. I find it impressive even today. When it comes to the sound, well, Golden Axe is a product of its time. That doesn't mean the music here is bad, not at all, but the quality of the sound chips that were present on the Sega System 16 is not really my favorite from this era. The music produced by this board will always sound a little bit metallic, which is far from something I like, but aside from that, the compositions are amazing. From the character selection screen to the ending sequence, every tune here is pretty good. It's a mixed selection with music that goes from adventure to mysterious to even eerie in some moments, like when you're crossing the cemetery on the back of the Great Eagle. Golden Axe was also the first beat'em up to add recorded voices to the enemies. Well, it's basically a scream when you kill them, and they weren't exactly recorded by Sega, but they are here and they add a lot to the game. You see, every time you kill an enemy, they will scream in pain and agony, and it was pretty impressive at the time because these guys sounded really hurt. The thing is, Sega took these sounds from movies like Rambo First Blood and Conan the Barbarian. The latter was also a huge inspiration for the soundtrack. It's more likely than not that Sega didn't really have authorization to use the sound clips, but as we already see here in the series, this has never stopped a Japanese company before. But unfortunately, here is where I believe the compliments end. While the music and the screams of your dying enemies are pretty good, the sounds of your attacks, not so much. They sound muffled and a bit mushy and really don't sound like a blade cutting through the flesh of your enemies. There are interesting details here, like how the skeletons sound drier when you hit them, but they are still a bit off, in my opinion. They will not ruin the experience, oh no, not at all, because if there's something that Golden Axe really excels in, is the gameplay. Golden Axe was, in 1989, an incredibly innovative game. Right from the start, you are welcomed with one of the biggest innovations you have ever seen in these games. You can pick who you wanna play. So far, all beat'em ups have only allowed the player to play with only one character. Double Dragon, Dynamity Dux, POW, Ninja Gaiden, all these games, even when played with a friend, had only one single archetype and its clone. In Golden Axe, things were a little bit different. Here your characters have a small difference in reach, with Gilius being the one with the farthest reach and Tiris the shortest, but there was another difference that I assure you really caught the player's attention. This was another thing introduced to the genre by this game, the ability to clean your screen from enemies by using consumable items. In other words, the special move. These magic powers were clearly the star of the show, and it wasn't uncommon to see kids gathering around a cabinet just to have a chance to spot one of these amazing moments. But the most interesting thing here is how these special attacks worked, which was pretty complex for a first time. The ability to use these attacks at any moment was crucial to the gameplay, and rewarding the player with a strong and visually impressive attack if they saved their bottles for later was a stroke of genius from Sega. Adding this element of risk-reward and more than that, a limited number of bottles per level added a unique strategy to the game that others didn't have. And if you were playing with a friend or a stranger, fighting for these bottles was a real thing. But it wasn't only the beautiful special moves that captivated kids around the world back in 1989. Golden Axe is, first and foremost, a very good game. The combat here is amazing, with mechanics never seen before. For Golden Axe, Sega opted for a more straightforward style, something that would mark their beat'em ups for the rest of the time, where you have an attack, a jump, and a special button. And while this may sound like a limiting factor, especially in a time where more than 70% of the games used 2 attack buttons, it was far from that. Golden Axe was also the first game to introduce directional inputs to add variation to your main attacks. Here you have your basic combo with 5 nice and very painfully looking strikes, or you can swing your weapon and throw the enemy away, or just carry and throw them in case you have a pit nearby. While there was little advantage between these moves, they were visually amazing and added some much needed variety to the game. It was impressive at the time how much variety you could find in this game, and even with all this different stuff to do, Sega added even more. To add one more thing to the list of firsts, Golden Axe was also the first game to introduce mounts for the player, and it wasn't only one. You have 3 different beasts here that you can ride and use to destroy your enemy. You have Chicken Leg, which can whip enemies with its tail, the Blue Dragon, whose flames can toast nearby enemies, and the Red Dragon, whose fireballs is the most overpowered thing in this game. These rides will appear at certain moments in the game being ridden by the enemies, but if you knock them down, they will simply sit and wait for the next rider. This was another point of contention back in the day, because this game has friendly fire and you can knock your quote-unquote friend from the ride you want. But while the game is great even for today's standard, it wasn't without its problems. The lack of enemy variety was pretty noticeable, with only a handful of enemies to fight, and the friendly fire can make it really difficult for those who are looking for a true co-op experience. None of these break the game. As I said, the game is pretty short, taking no more than 20 minutes to beat, so the enemy repetition is not really a problem, especially when you have such awesome and dangerous bosses. Friendly fire can also be mitigated by keeping a certain distance from your friends. Since the characters aren't so big, you can comfortably fit one player on each half of the screen and avoid any quote-unquote incident. But in the end, hitting your friend by accident or not was always part of the game, and manage this can be pretty entertaining. Golden Axe had an amazing port for the Sega Mega Drive, but it was also ported to a ton of other consoles and home computers. Master System, Amiga, Atari ST, and even the WonderSwan got a port of this game. Golden Axe is one of those games that had a lasting impact on those who played it back in the day. The gritty look, the decayed world, the brutal and sheer violence of everything was something never seen before in this genre. After all, this was the first dark fantasy beat'em up to ever be released. The game would make a return years later on the arcades with an impressive sequel, but it will take some time before we visit that one. Unfortunately, it's not easy to play Golden Axe nowadays thanks to Sega delisting the game everywhere, but as you all know, emulation is a thing, so yeah. And that's it for the video, folks. I hope you all have enjoyed this look at this classic game, and I will be back pretty soon with more arcade goodness for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and check the description to see how you can support the channel by buying beat'em ups. Win-win! In the meantime, I hope you all have an awesome week, and remember, keep arcades alive.